All right, it's been a bit of a hiatus, but we are back in action. Today we have a extremely special guest. He might be my most special of the week. Now, it is the first day of the week, but we'll see. He might prove to be one of our most interesting guests so far we've had on the show. His name is Malachi Munroe of Six Figure Med Spa, out swimming in the ocean of the sun and beaches and bikinis out in Miami, Florida. I am immensely jealous as I freeze and chill to the bone in Denver, Colorado, land of the Rockies and Coors Light. But we're joined by Malachi Munroe again today. Malachi, thanks for being on the show. How in the heck are you?
Thank you so much, Austin. It is honestly a pleasure and an honor to be here and share your platform. Good morning from sunny Miami, Florida. How you doing?
Hey, things are good. Things are good. You're overly optimistic, I think, that this is a pleasure. We might end up hating each other by the end of the show. So we'll have to see how this goes. I tease. We're going to have a great time. Listen, it's very rare that I have someone on the show where I am oozing with excitement. And guests in the past, of course, that's not the case. I've loved all my guests so far. But today, as I look at Malachi's website, as I get my head around who he is, what he does, and the rest of it, Malachi, in a nutshell, and I'm going to give him the space to tell listeners what he does, his world that he operates in, and the rest of it. But Malachi is the owner of, again, Six Figure Med Spa. So this is going to be a show tailored to med spa owners or folks in the wellness space or cryotherapy center, and I'm sure everyone else in beauty is going to benefit the same. But it's a rarity that you come across somebody that on the top of their website exudes such extreme confidence that they guarantee that if you don't see results in working with them, that they will send you via carrier pigeon, snail mail, or a fax machine or whatever, a private jet, $1,000 check if they don't deliver on the results as a result of working with them. So I'm extremely excited to have Malachi on the show. He's got a lot of insights, I'm sure, and we're going to get into those today. So Malachi, why don't we start from the top? It's more interesting than from the bottom. And the top meaning, what is your story? How did you start the entity that you are operating now? And maybe a quick gist on what you do.
Thank you so much, Austin. A lot of times in life, we're guided by direction, right? The things that we want to do, the places that we want to go. And that's no different with me. I mean, I got my start years ago. I published a book at age 11, 12, landed a Fox News interview. It was my first book on technology. And it was only because every single morning at 6 a.m., my grandmother would call me. She had just bought an iPhone 4 and she wanted to get her daily dose of tech help. Okay. Now keep in mind, I'm in middle school. I love sleep. And this thing is starting to get out of control. And so I write a book and I had this crazy idea that, listen, other people might have this problem. So why don't you take it to them? And so I began at a very young age discovering what my path of entrepreneurship would be. And it just so happened that I was more attracted to this world of entrepreneurship than I was academics, because I was put out over 5 schools in under a year. I had to go to school literally in an entirely different country. But no matter what it is, no matter what was happening in my life, the one area where I was always thriving was business, entrepreneurship, communication, leadership, all these tenets of success in life. And that became my focus, because that became what I realized that I was skilled in, that I was skilled at. So years down the line, I decided to make the crazy leap to officially leave college. And I've been doing this full time for a few years, and man, I love every beat of it.
Nothing gets me more excited than hearing the story of someone dropping out of school. Best decision of your life. Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Bill Nye the Science Guy, you name it. Everyone's a dropout, and they always do great things on the other end, and Malachi's testament to that. So what does Six Figure Med Spa do? From what I can gather, it seems like you guys are essentially race fuel, jet fuel, for the ocean of med spas that have their beautiful rocket ships. They're on the platform, and they just don't have the gas to get the clients they need to hit 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures annually. So what does Six Figure Med Spa do, if you can encapsulate it in a nutshell to give the listener some context of the world that you operate in?
Much like our website says, sixfiguremedspa.com acts as rocket boosters to the wellness business and medical centers today, simply because there's more to business than just one dimension. There's more than just like paid ads. There's more than just marketing. There's, sales, there's operations, there's fulfillment, there's delivery. There are all of these other aspects of your business that, to be frank, in the wellness space, many business owners don't go to business school, right? Or many business owners, especially with the opportunities that other, manufacturers have, like CryoSkin, they get an opportunity to own a machine that can be a high profit center, but they have absolutely no idea how to properly integrate it into their business and into their life. And so what we do is we take a full scope approach from all aspects of that journey to really be a partner in growing your business to where you once dreamed that it would potentially be. And so that's been our core focal point. Yep.
Well, that's enormously exciting for the obvious reasons, but maybe the not so obvious reason that I find this immensely interesting is that according to the American Med Spa Association survey from last year, and I'm excited to get 2020's edition, but it won't come out, I'm assuming, here for at least a few months. But last year, the top 3 concerns that med spa owners had were: number 1, compliance; number 2, employees, so retaining and hiring; and lastly, and I think this is the world that you operate in, is marketing strategy and social media. And I think a lot of people are utterly and absolutely clueless as to the power and the lever that social is. So Instagram, no less, Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. So
Right.
they're clueless because, like you said, a lot of these people in this world have maybe even never picked up a business book, no less a marketing strategy book. And so, insert you.
Right.
So why don't we actually change gears here a touch and get into some of the mistakes that you see a lot of the folks that you're working with initially making that led them to you? So are there patterns that you see? People do this, or they're not doing this, or they should be doing this, or just general mistakes that you see as a starting point here?
The biggest mistake that I see oftentimes, Austin, is inconsistency with their goal and their mission, right? Because a lot of times in life, and especially now more than ever, I mean, when we look outside the doors and we look into the TVs, we see calamity as the new norm, right? We see inconsistency, we see disruption, we see intentional division. And so the biggest mistake that a lot of business owners are making is their personal inconsistency with the goals and dreams that they say that they have. They buy a machine, they open up the business, they set business goals, right? They do all the things that are seemingly intentional to moving in the direction of growing their business. But when it comes to doing the legwork, picking up the phone, when it comes to making sure that the leads that are coming in are being called, when it comes to rebooking people for your retention, for your back end, on multiplying your customer value, a lot of times people don't commit to those actions because they aren't the sexy ones. They aren't the ones that are low effort, high return. They aren't the ones that pay dividends day in and day out, but they're the ones that are necessary. And so when people have these behaviors, they show up in other areas of their lives and in their businesses, and it's all the same thing. It's you say that you want one thing, but the actions that we take on that path are completely different. Or we even make decisions that are completely different. And that's the biggest pitfall that I see a lot of people fall into today.
So it sounds like a failure to commit to execute. Maybe they build some funnel. One of the guests I had on recently was a big advocate of ClickFunnels. And she's using that, and she's of course executing because she understands the importance of things like killing the latency between a lead landing in her funnel and her engaging that lead, for example. So she's executing. But is it really a problem of execution, you think? Or is it a problem of something different, perhaps a lack of knowledge or something else? I'm trying to get an idea of why this is, because this is a common theme that I hear over and over again. And I suspect it's execution and an incapacity to execute, but maybe I'm wrong.
I think it's hard to corner it into one thing, because when we look at the hundreds of business owners that we work with every single month, a lot of them are where they are for varying reasons. And here's the thing, I'm a firm believer that no matter where you are in your life and your business, you're under the influence of someone or something. But with over 7 billion people in the world growing every single month, with the U.S. Department of Labor saying that, listen, millions of jobs are in potential to be created because of how many new businesses are coming up, you begin to realize there's so many different pieces of data. But I think the core of what people need to understand is that every single day we get to choose. We get to show up as the person who we dream of being, the business owner who we dream of being, making the decisions, making the calls, taking the actions that are in alignment and identity with that person. Or we get to show up as the person who falls short, the person who is in the business 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but on the final day of the business, they can truly say, what if I gave an extra 30%? What if I gave an extra 40, 50%? And so I think no matter what the problem is, the most important thing is having the desire and understanding that there is more for me to do and that I can always be growing to the next level by figuring out what exactly that is.
It's been a total of maybe, I don't know, half the shows I've come back to this same quote from, bizarrely, a philosopher. Maybe this is biased and I have a philosophy degree, but Nietzsche had a quote that said something to the effect of, he that knows his why can weather any how. And I suspect that the majority of business owners do not have a codified why or a set in stone why that's on their vision board, on their whiteboard, or whatever that they optimize to. And so as a result, they end up just busy doing tasks. And oftentimes those tasks are $10 an hour tasks when they could be taking their time to detach from working in the business and instead getting out and working on the business, doing $100 an hour tasks or $1,000 an hour tasks. So there's a fear of outsourcing. There's a fear of hiring to automate some of the admin stuff. You know, a lot of massage therapists that I talk to say the best decision they've ever made was hiring a receptionist to navigate and manage their calendars, for example. So would you say that it's something similar, you know, when someone goes to their deathbed and they ask the question or they retire, what if I gave another 30%? Would you attribute it to that? Or is there something else that you suspect would be the culprit and why people don't give more or, you know, fail to execute or whatever? Because it's a crisis from everyone.
A lot of times it's hard.
It's the theme.
Yeah, a lot of times it's hard. And here's the thing, man. Like I'm a big believer of having centered focus. Like, I'm not going to tell you to focus on the positive. I'm not going to tell you to focus on like the negative. I'm going to tell you focus on exactly what exists. I'm going to tell you when you're looking at where you want to go, focus on what you have right now, which is an immense, massive opportunity every single second to make a difference and make a change. So listen, it's hard, but so is not having the life that you've always wanted. And so when we look at, and not only in the industry, but in our own personal lives, the decisions that we're making, it comes back to the same thing that we mentioned first and foremost. And I think that's something that you've made a personal commitment to in your life with excellence. Are we going to show up in excellence to build the business that we go through all this trouble and this hard time building? Or are we going to go through all these hard struggles and still not come out with what we set out to want in the first place? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is really, let's say we could affix this problem onto the back, like pinning the tail on the donkey, to a lack of people understanding themselves, I think. Here's what I mean. And Jung talks about this a lot, and I know this is not a psychological oriented podcast, but a lot of people have no idea who they are, what they love, what they want, etc. And it's because there's this sort of aversion to introspection, I suspect. So here's what I would challenge listeners to do, and then we'll pivot on to some more tactical things on, you know, platforms that you're excited about and the rest of it. But listeners, I would challenge you to do, there's actually a personality test. It's the VIO. I think it's VIO. It's a personality test that was put out by, or recommended by, the Yale professor. I think her name is Laurie Santos. She put out the single most popular Yale course in history on happiness. Wow. And I took the test. It was a strength finding test. And I realized that my first strength was humor, and second was appreciation of beauty. So why do I care about that? What's the relevance of this conversation as it pertains to marketing, no less, and execution, the rest of it? Well, I realized that I appreciate beauty to such a degree that I've made it my life mission, my why, to promulgate the gospel of beauty and help people find beauty themselves. And then when they find it, help them appreciate it, et cetera, et cetera. Long story short, I found my why. I would encourage listeners to do the same.
Austin, I love that you mentioned that, because that's something that I've honestly been racking my mind in trying to figure out. I mean, when you look at the background that you've had, especially with just being in the military, like what would virtually be the polar opposite of the beauty world, and you now make that pivot into having the transition in your mission becoming like helping to bring the mission of over 100% of women in America feeling beautiful. How does someone make that transition? Because I think that goes in line with the same thing that we're talking about in personal excellence. Because you've had a high standard of performing in your military background. You came into CryoSkin as, in sales. You climbed the ranks to become head of sales. If anybody knows, it's you on what that personal commitment to excellence is every single day. And because you've done it in multiple areas, what is that transition like for people who are wanting to say, listen, this is my opportunity. Q4 is my chance. 2021 is my chance to recommit, to go all in and to tap into who I am supposed to become.
I think tactically the answer is somewhat simple, but its simplicity is difficult to execute and commit to do. So let's peel into the way in which one finds their why, let's say, and then maybe we can get into how you can tactically commit to excellence and shun anything that is not excellence, let's say. Okay. So I think the way that I found this immense interest and appreciation of beauty, which naturally align with the role that I serve now, is I committed to do nothing. And here's what I mean. There is a really interesting figure in Silicon Valley. His name is Naval, and his last name escapes me. He was on the Tim Ferriss show recently. And one of the most impactful things that he's incorporated in his life is a very specific style of meditation. And here's what the meditation looks like. He sits his back upright, and for 60 minutes, and this is a challenge he put to the listeners on that show, for 60 minutes, for 60 days, he would sit and do literally nothing and allow his mind to go wherever it wanted to go. And through that, you find clarity and you find the thing that you want to do that maybe has been hidden in your subconscious or whatever. But I think most people are living lives of immense distraction. And in fact, you could argue that attention to your own inner state, your own mind, your own desires, impulses, your ability to focus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Attention is the rarest currency in the world today because we live in an era of distraction. Twitter, Pinterest, Snapchat, blah, 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 blah. Everything's vying for your attention. Your dopamine receptors are blowing up all the time. And in an environment like that, you don't have the space to quiet your mind or yourself, your setting, your environment, and discover what your why was or is. So I did that. And I realized, that can join with some personality tests and just introspection, which to a lot of people is nerve-wracking because you might not like what you find. But I did that. And I realized that this is the path that I wanted to embark on. And I made it my life purpose, let's say, is to appreciate beauty, recognize it, compliment it when I see it. And that beauty can be everywhere. Music, fashion, speech, whatever, doesn't matter. Literature, et cetera. So that's how I would say tactically, if you're struggling, listeners, to figure out what your why is, why you exist, why you're in business, why you're doing microblading, why you're doing Botox treatments, fat loss treatments, whatever, and you're losing your sense of why and your North Star, sit down and maybe start with 20 minutes a day and allow your mind to wander and reveal to you what it is that you should be doing and find your why through that.
And I love the fact that you encourage them to wander, because I think too many times, especially when we think about something that as so structured and rigid as business, we try and contain something like your why in the same realm. When in actuality, you increase the likelihood of finding it by how frequently you let yourself roam and how often you let yourself explore things and become more engulfed into things that you ultimately didn't even realize that you cared about, that was passionate about you. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you just have to commit to give yourself the space to introspect, right? The unexamined life is not worth living. And I know this is not a philosophy podcast. We keep doing shout outs to dead philosophers, but there's a lot of profundity in that statement. So I think you need to carve out time to do that and then find your why. And I think, frankly, as a result of finding your why, to your other question, and then we'll pivot into some other more tactical, actionable items that people can explore and entertain for growth, the rest of it, starting marketing and its neighbors.
But this is the most important part, though, because when you look at it, when we look at a spreadsheet of the most successful clients, we're talking about clients who do 60, 70, 80K a month cash collected every single month like clockwork. When you look at the most successful clients on that spectrum, it comes down to these kinds of things right here. The seemingly boring, unimportant stuff that don't get you excited, that don't, show you what your next year could look like. But this is the hard work that sets the foundation for you to do the inner workings, especially in your mindset, that allow you to truly grow. So I love the fact that we're even going in this direction.
The question you asked about how can you commit to excellence, I think could be as simple as saying that the person that does not know why they're showing up to their spa, their cryotherapy center, those that are showing up and do not understand or know why, it makes them incapable of even being interested in executing with excellence with everything they do, from being attentive to how their email copy looks when they send it out to a potential client, or the way the towels are hung in the cryotherapy room, and the robes, and the way the sandals are laid out in the changing room, or whatever.
Yep.
It's an imperative. So again, I think as an actionable, let's call this our first actionable for the day, is listeners, I would challenge you to turn off Suits, Billions, or whatever your flavor is of show on Netflix for a night, and sit with yourself in silence and allow yourself to explore what your why might be. And then all these other challenges, largely, I think, will fall to the wayside in light of that.
100%. And I think adding in our second actionable, give a little alley-oop action. When you sit by yourself, that gives you the opportunity to analyze every area of your life and your business and do an audit. And ask yourself, when I first dreamed of opening up this business 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, am I running the business that I dreamed of today? And even if your answer is no, don't get caught up in how upsetting or disappointing it is. Get caught up in the fact that now, more than ever, you are the most equipped you've ever been with the opportunity to make a change. Whether that's calling someone who you know is doing thriving and asking them, listen, how are you doing this? Whether that's reaching out to your CrossSkin rep and asking, hey, listen, what are you seeing in the most successful businesses? What can I do? Or whether that's going to any online communities. There are tons of support groups, local business groups. But the most important thing is to take that action in that correct step, because that's where infinite opportunity lies. Yeah.
Yeah. How bad do you want the outcome that you've set for your life? If you want it bad enough, you'll find a way to get it. And on that note, let's do a jump into a different swim lane here, or swim lane. And that swim lane that I think would be the most interesting for today's discussion topically would be the topic of growth, right? We just came off the back end of a ferocious wave of lockdowns. God forbid that they ooze or eke into our universes again. I think it's already happening in California and potentially Illinois, et cetera. So, this potential next wave of lockdowns is going to provide, a couple things on the positive and negative. A lot of anxiety for business owners, but also equally, you might say, an opportunity to re-examine their approach, their vector for how they think of everything, frankly, hiring, new product acquisition, the profit, um, optimization, strategy, funnels, and the rest of it. So let's talk about growth. And here's why, by the way. A bit of additional context from that same survey from the American Med Spa Association from last year. The top 2 opportunities, well, top 3, were all really oriented around growth. So number 1 was adding new devices, services, or procedures. Number 2 was growth. And then number 3 was having a strong reputation, brand, and customer loyalty. And so from what I've gathered so far, Malachi, and my eye on your website, you guys are largely oriented around the race gas, the jet fuel for wellness businesses. So specifically marketing strategy and the like. How would you say, here's the question. That's the setup. Here's the question. If I call you and I own a med spa and we're about to start the journey of working together and I become a client of yours, where do you typically start? Because I'm assuming part of it is you have to get under the hood and identify where it might be hemorrhaging cash, bleeding, et cetera. Where do you typically start with new clients to get an idea of where you can help?
So a lot of it comes down based off of where they are at the point in time. And this is a great segue, because after you do all that visualization, after you do all that asking question why, you want to know, all right, what can I do, right? And so when we begin first working with a lot of our clients, we just very simple, understand and assess what's happening. Like a lot of times people say, listen, I just need more leads. When in actuality, we dig deep and say, listen, no, you don't. Because the leads you've been getting, you haven't even been converting them properly. So you also need more sales. And so the very basic minimum, we do a full component, a full breakdown of where are all the bottlenecks and breakdowns in your business, right? Where can we best support you? And then we allocate our resources on the most effective ways to get you quick results. So a lot of our clients see an initial $3,000 to $5,000 within the first 24 to 36 hours, because we start with organic resources that a lot of times are untapped. Because here's the thing. When you look at things like marketing, you have to understand when you're putting your business out into the world, only like 10% of the market is ready to buy at any given point in time, okay? Yeah. And of that smaller 10%, there's a very small 3% that are ready right now. Everybody else in that 10% subset, that 7%, they have the intent to change at any given point in time, but they're not like that 3% who are actively ready to buy. So your marketing, especially on the front end, needs to be designed to capture that 3% and nurture that 7%, but also you have the bottom 90% of the rest of your marketing engine that deals with the right follow-up, the right systems, right? Having high converting sales process to close them effortlessly in the 5 and 10 package sessions. And so when you look at our process, it starts with just diagnosing where you are, figuring out where is your easiest, fastest, quickest opportunity. Then what's the long-term game plan after we plug the emergency holes to grow you to where you should be? And it's that 4-step process that we've used for hundreds of clients that have landed them into their next location, another machine acquisition, and ultimately the lives that they've begun to start to build.
Yeah. Yeah. And the corollary of that is that 30%, and I'm assuming you're citing the Chet Holmes buyers pyramid, but 30% of people do not want your service. And so stop trying to strong arm them through gratuitous emailing, text messaging, etc. By the way, it's illegal.
Yeah.
Anti-spam laws, etc. But be aware of that fact that first of all, you can't serve everybody. Stop trying to, and focus on the 3%. And I think what Malachi is saying is dead on. You have to have your systems optimized for maximizing conversion. So asking yourself the question as you're doing a self-audit, maybe as you're visualizing, okay, what happens when a lead comes in through, I don't know, pick your favorite medium, Instagram, and they land in your funnel? Okay, how long does it take you, listener, to have someone on your team or yourself connect with that lead? Is it a minute? Is it 2 minutes? Is it an hour? Is it a day? And by the way, research, and you could just type in speed lead into Google to get data here, but you'll realize that one of the more recent data sets that I've seen indicates that there is a 391% increase in the probability of you converting a lead if you call them within 1 minute. And it drops to 117% after 2 minutes. And it continues to dwindle to where if you wait a day, your odds of converting that lead into a paying customer is 17%. Abysmal.
And Austin, that's if you've done what you need to have a great offer to get them in as a lead on the front end. Because the biggest mistake that I've seen a lot of businesses make, especially with how we've helped a lot of our partners transition to online in the middle of COVID and still having record months in an online virtual selling system, is that because the market has changed the way that they buy, you have to change the way that you sell.
Yes.
And if you fail to do so, it's going to be no wonder you're continuing to struggle 3, 4, 5, 6 months down the line. Guys, we listen to something, Jerry Minor, amazing sales expert. He says something that I love. He says, we live in what's called the post-trust era. I mean, think about the years of the real estate market crashing. Think about how easy it is to start a business, how low the barrier to entry is. When you have all of these factors playing up against you, it's important to always be adapting, to always be paying attention to the trends. And that's why we stay tapped into different things like shows like this that give you an insight on the industry to different communities. But Austin, I'm curious to know, based off of your experience, we talked about the offer, we talk about the marketing, what have been the best sales practices that you've seen that help partners sell those packages and make, these machines and marketing them the best thing they've done to their business?
Well, I have a book coming out on the very topic.
Uh-oh.
Stay tuned. Now, here's the deal. I think there's a couple things that you can heuristically lean on that make a lot of this easier. Okay. The first thing that I'm seeing trend-wise is that the reality is, especially in the world that I operate in, which is all things body, so body contouring, body sculpting, slimming, call it whatever you want, non-invasive fat reduction, okay, which is a product that CryoSkin is designed to be used for. A lot of these devices, ours included, best deliver when you offer the treatment in a stack or a set. So package is the term that most people use.
Yeah.
So when somebody comes in and they say, hey, I want to get one treatment of CryoSkin or Endospheres or ImSculpt or whatever your device is that you have on your floor, you have to be willing to challenge the customer because first of all, you need to be the expert. And so you need to know based on that customer's needs, which is the product of doing actual consults, which is another topic entirely. But you need to be willing to challenge your customer so that you can best serve them and help them attain the results that they're after. So in other words, if someone comes to you and says, hey, I want one treatment of this, I don't know, pick a device that typically requires 20 treatments or 12 treatments or something. Laser lipo, okay. The reality is you need multiple treatments. And a lot of people don't know that. And because everybody's sensitive to price, you have to be in a position and willing to push back and say, no, actually, this best serves you. Here's why. And so long story short, the heuristic is everything that you do should be seen through the lens of, does this serve this person best or not?
100%.
So there's a whole slew of avenues you can walk down that trickle off of that, knowing who you can actually serve and who you can't. Right. So being choosy with who you take on as a customer, because if you take on a bad customer, meaning one that you can't actually serve, right? Maybe they want to have liposuction and they need to have liposuction, but you advocate, no, you need CryoSkin or something different. And they do a package of 10 and they don't get the dramatic results that they would have with liposuction, for example. You did them a disservice. Ultimately, it's going to bite you in the backside because you're going to get a bad review. So anyway, I could talk about this for hours, but I'm going to flip the scripts and I'm going to ask you the same question. What have you seen has been the biggest dramatic uplift in people's conversion rates, et cetera, as it pertains to the way in which they sell their potential customers?
Austin, a couple of years ago, I learned something that ultimately changed the lens for me on sales. It says the number one objective of sales is not to close. It's not to get a package deal. It's not to finally pay yourself and make your machine payment. The ultimate goal and objective of sales is to do what's absolutely best for the client. And that goes both ways. So that means if someone is not leaning to working with you, but you know you can absolutely change their lives, there's a way and there's a skill in creating the right pressure in that sales scenario to lead them to make that investment, because you know without a shadow of a doubt, you can transform them. And so I think the biggest and easiest way to create that shift in your sales is exactly the same thing that you talk about, interestingly enough. It's having that certainty and using what I call the doctor-patient model in all of your consults. And in essence, it goes like this. When you go to a doctor, you go to a doctor with the problem or challenge that you have in your life. And when you go in that session, the doctor is able to assess and quote you a price based off of exactly what it is that you want done. Now, here's the most important part. Price in isolation doesn't make sense. Because whatever
it's
the price,
completely arbitrary.
It does not make sense at all.
Yeah.
Now, the most important thing though, is that in that console, you can link your investment to the cost of not doing anything. Okay, maybe you don't want to invest to buy this 5-pack, but you're also still going to pay. You're just not going to pay me, but you will pay the price when you aren't able to engage with, your kids after school like you used to be able to. And you ask yourself 3, 4, 5 years ago, what if I had first started on this journey right then and there? And so I think it comes back to the same thing that we keep talking about, the unsexy, the boring stuff, but making the commitment to upgrade your skill, right? To work with a sales trainer for your team, to seek out CrowdScan's resources. It comes back to always asking yourselves, am I running the business that I always dreamed to be running? And if I'm not, how can I do it?
Yeah.
How can I do it? Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think the starting point for all of this, if we're going to direct the rest of the conversation towards selling strategies and ideas and methodologies and the rest of it that people can deploy immediately, obviously with our tight window, we can't really get into the weeds just yet and tailor to people's different situations, et cetera. So this is why mental models and heuristics are generally better suited for navigating the endlessly varying terrain that you'll run into, because every customer is different, right? Is to know a couple key takeaways. So number one, I would say, and Malachi, do color these if you have any additional color to add. Number one, understand and know who you serve. If you don't know who you serve, you'll try to serve everybody, and then subsequently you'll serve nobody.
100%. The med spas that we work with that scale the fastest, that scale the most aggressively, all have one thing in common. They aren't trying to sell packages. They aren't trying to, be the best CrowdScan center in their area. They have a core offer and they serve a core market with that offer. I'll say that again. They're not racing to sell 5 and 10 packs. They're not trying to see how many 3-packs they can sell in a week. They have a core offer. They've positioned their services to solve one core problem, and they found people locally who all say, yes, I have that problem, and this is me raising my hand to say that I want your help fixing it. And we see it every single month. So don't just know who you serve, get a deep understanding of what do you do on a feeling level, and who do you do it for? And that's going to make your marketing and your sales way easier, way easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I think probably the biggest mistake that I see people make, and now I admittedly operate more in the sales world, so I have a lot of interactions with sales reps, salespeople, et cetera. As a buyer too, as I'm looking at new tools for the company, et cetera. I think the number one, the top 2 mistakes that they make, let's say, and this piggybacks off of what you just said. Number one, they don't do discovery right. So they don't figure out what my problem is. They don't understand the totality and the full scope of what I'm faced with or dealing with. And so they rush to a solution. Well, here's your answer. You need to buy product. I don't even know. You don't even know what I my issue is. What do you mean?
Yeah.
I need your product. I don't know you. I don't know what you do. I don't know what your product does, how it works, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And here you are spouting off the solution when you don't know what my challenge is. So as a med spa owner, somebody comes in, maybe they're struggling with this thing, but you might, through consultative work and energy exuding, you might realize that no, actually their issue is this, this, this. Let's get a full grasp on what the challenges they're faced with, and then prescribe a solution that marries and overlays directly on top of the challenges that they're faced with, so as to hedge against them having buyer's remorse, which, by the way, is the worst thing for your branding and reputation if you get bad reviews.
And here's why what Austin is talking about is so powerful. Because you allow the decision to transcend their logical ability. It then goes from, I'm buying these packages because of whatever issue that I want to fix, to this is now an opportunity for me to rekindle my relationship with my significant other. And what it happens at a deep level is they become your biggest fan because they become more sold on it emotionally and justify it to themselves logically later after they've already purchased. So what happens? They become more champions on the sale and the process than you are. And what happens with you? You've done your moral obligation and selling to someone to serve them to the highest level. Dude, I love exactly where you're going with this.
Yeah, and that bit about the post-trust era that we're living in, this dovetails beautifully into that. No one trusts you because everybody suspects that they're going to be sold. And what does that really mean? It means that buyers, you and I, everyone, has an aversion to feeling pushed into a decision, bullied into a decision, or worse, getting sold the wrong solution to whatever their challenge actually is. So how do you get ahead of that? You take the time to do discovery. And at times, look, the truth is someone comes in, they're going to badger you on price, and you have to be willing and capable of reframing that moment, which is at times a seemingly volatile moment where it might go nuclear if you say the wrong thing and upset them. But I just want the price. You can't serve them if that's the platform you start the interaction with. So you have to find a way to reorient that interaction around, I get that you want price, and I can appreciate that. I totally get it. But let me figure out with you through mutual exploration whether or not I can even serve you or help you get to where you want to go on your transformation journey. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people that don't know their value, they don't know who they can serve, they don't know what their ideal ICP or persona of their buyers and customers looks like. They just rush into guessing that whatever option they have in mind can serve this customer. In reality, it might not be the case. So you have to slow down, right? Here's a phrase from the Navy SEALs: slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Go slow during the consultative phase, get into the challenge they're faced with, and then offer the solution.
More importantly than that, if you are able to dive into the pain and the challenge that they have, and not only what you're doing for them, but what working with them allows them to experience as a result of successfully fixing this problem, what you'll find is they'll bring up, how can they buy? Because they're going to let you know, because you're digging into and agitating the pain. Yep. And so you're warming them up to want to make that jump. And those are the best people to work with because the environment is authentic, is genuine, and that's true, real leadership.
Yes. Now, and actually that's a perfect point to close the show with today. We're almost out of time. I will have you back because we haven't even scratched the surface of anything.
We haven't, my man. And
so
that's
I will have you back on.
Having a conversation of this magnitude, it's not one-dimensional.
No.
Because there's so many different moving parts. When you look at how do you have a 6-figure med spa, it's not just, paid ads. It's not just sales. It's a healthy flow of all those things. So dude, I love what you're doing here.
Here's a closing thought for the listener. Okay. People ask me all the time, How do I close? How do I close this deal? How do I close this sale? How do I get this customer to sign the dotted line and buy a 10-pack from my spa? Whatever. Well, you shouldn't have a close. What do I mean? What Malachi just said is dead on. What should happen is that in the consultation, you convey such extreme expertise and mastery of your domain and your capacity to address their problem with the perfect solution that they beg you for the next step. What do I do? How do I get it? I will tell you, the last 2 calls that I've been on with salespeople for solutions that I've been looking for, when they describe my problem in such a way that it was frankly better than I could do it, and they understood the totality of my challenge, I had no choice but to just beg them. How do I get it? How much money do you want? I don't care what it costs me. You're the guy to fix my problem. You're the gal to fix my problem. Show me the way. So on that note, it's amazing that we have already gone through 45 minutes of conversation and have been speaking, it seems like, for 2 minutes. So I will have you back on the show maybe as soon as this week. So listeners, we will get more of Malachi. We will get into more tactical stuff on execution within marketing strategy and the rest of it. So we will have him back on here. But let's wrap the show for today in the spirit of time. I know we both have day jobs and the rest of it. Where can the listener find you if they want to get into the world, the universe of the master of mindset, Malachi, from Six Figure Med Spa? How can they connect?
Ladies and gentlemen, sixfiguremedspa.com is ideally the #1 program and service, because we're not an agency. It's the #1 program to take your med spa from exactly where it is right now and grow it to the business that it has potential to be. We do it through more than just marketing, more than just sales, and we actually take ownership of a lot of the process. We even do a lot of the consults for you. So sixfiguremedspa.com, get your prepays, get your prepaid packages and treatments and offers, okay? Because it's the next generation of growing your business, and we're always pushing the envelope forward. Thanks so much, Austin, for having me on your show.
Of course. I don't like everybody, but I like Malachi. Listeners, get in contact, get in his orbit. His gravity is strong. He'll help you get to where you want to go. And if nothing else, I'm sure he'll be a bubbling source of insights if you guys find that you're not right for each other, which is unlikely because he's great. So there you have it. We'll park the car on that note to conflate 2 metaphors. And we'll call that a day. Malachi, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks so much, my man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. Bye-bye.